Welcome to Impact Duty. I'm your host, Manisha Dadlani Kripalani, bringing you empowering stories of friends and people I admire. Their voices have given me joy and the momentum to share their stories with you. Deepinder Sehgal is a lawyer by profession and a social activist working on various humanitarian projects. She volunteered as a keynote speaker and a forerunner for a rally in support of the ongoing farmers' protests held at the Food and Agricultural Organization, United Nations, in Rome. Deepinder joins us today to shine light on the ongoing protests in India. Hello, Deepinder. How are you?
I'm good, Manisha. How are you?
I'm well as can be with the cold we are facing over here. It's a frightfully cold day today.
Yes, apparently yes, yeah.
So I'm extra glad that you're joining us on Impact Duty, especially to talk about an issue that is rather relevant globally, but very significant for India, and that is the farmers' protest. It's been one of the largest protests in Indian history, in recent Indian history, and it's gone on since September, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But I would love for you, Deepinder, to give us a bird's eye view on what's really happening and throw some light on this rather significant issue.
Thanks, Manisha. Thanks a lot for having me and giving me this opportunity. And you are doing a tremendous job, an amazing endeavor to put people on a platform, especially in Switzerland where, apparently everything is mountains and cows. So you're giving us this platform and I'm honored, honestly, to represent this farmers protest on a bigger platform like you just mentioned. So to begin with, like it is rightly said, where injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. So a protest is, as you know, whereby people from different ethnic mosaics, different cultures, occupation, religion, they object a certain cause or a certain act, And coming back to the farmers' protest, it is essential to say that the protest has not been now, it has been a part of our colonial era ever since, I mean, if you look at the history, ever since 1940s or before that. To begin with, a very eminent salt march, which was done by Mahatma Gandhi, where he started the protest of being the fundamental right, of the people, especially because against Britishers, at that time.
Right.
And then if you come in the recent history, in 2012, there was a big US protest against controversial laws, which infringed freedom of speech, which infringed freedom of internet at that time. And then there was a prominent one in 2017, if I'm not wrong. It was a single day longest protest of women for misogynistic remarks from Mr. President. And it was the longest day demonstration all around US. And until recently, a lot of people might not know, there was a farmers' protest in Europe in November 2020 in Netherlands. So it was a Dutch farmers' protest against government policies, raining against imminent processions of nitrogen oxide and much more. So protest, like you said, protests have been an integral part of our history.
Right.
It is not now. It has been happening from colonial era up till recently. A very major protest which happened in India in 2018, where Article 370 was rendered inoperative. And it is still in Indian constitution, but it was rendered inoperative. So protests have been happening from colonial era. Coming back to this protest, it is the longest and the largest protest in Indian history. Predominantly because more than 300,000 Indian farmers are converging around Delhi borders,
That's right.
So, and the longest being and the largest being, why? Because if you look at the agrarian traditions of India, India retains its agrarian traditions not only in farming, but in, of course, in industrial and, intellectual other things. But this farming is one of the most major livelihood of Indian
Exactly.
farmers. It is the 60 and about up to 60 to 70% of the population, it is in Indian farming.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, so farming being the bedrock of India's economy, their imperative concern is the detrimental effect on their economic growth. So this is why fundamentally this protest is happening. Yeah.
Wonderful. Deepinder, I'm going to take you back to who is actually protesting at the moment. And then I'm going to ask you what and why. Okay,
Yeah.
like getting into the details. So who actually is protesting out of the farmers right now?
It is the farmers, definitely from Indian farmers, all origin from Haryana, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra. So it is globally, if you see the impact, I mean, of course, it is, there is an impact globally, but Indian farmers, their families, allies, the workers, the laborers, they're all collectively sitting there and agitating for the three farmer bills. Yeah.
Okay, and that takes us then to the laws, which I believe are what is being contested. All right, so I believe there are three laws that were initiated somewhere in September. I believe those are the three laws that are being contested. Would you like to tell us a little, in simple terms, what these three laws are? And if there's actually one out of the three laws that are being contested more than the others?
That's a very good question, because there is a single clause which is more controversial than the other ones. Okay. But basically, this bill was passed in September 2020, last year, right, which created a havoc all around India. And it is majorly because of three reasons. Firstly, that the bill was passed unconstitutionally, without procedure rules, without any verbal recount, or any explicit, discussion with farmers, their organizations, or any stakeholders. So this was the major concern of the farmers, that why is it being passed not in a constitutional manner? Whereas if a bill, when it is passed, it has to have a major discussion in the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, then bill becomes an act, So right. Firstly, it is not passed, like I said, unconstitutionally. Secondly, it is passed in the midst of pandemic, with verbal communication and no recount. Like I said, no discussion with key stakeholders. And thirdly, it impliedly deregulates the agriculture sector.
Right. So, and is there one out of these three that is more contentious, or that the farmers feel more against, per se, out of these three? Or is it all three laws that are
It is
being
fundamentally,
debated?
if you look at the legal perspective, it is all three, because there are clauses and ambiguities to it, which have an implied meaning. But if you look at them, of course, explicitly, you would say, oh, empowerment and facilitation, protection, amenities, they are actually, beneficial to the farmers. But if you read through them, if you read the articles and why it has been passed, you understand the depth of it and the implied meaning of it. So if you look at it, the first bill, should I explain, briefly what is it about, right?
Yes.
Yes. So the first clause of the bill says empowerment and protection,
right,
of price assurances and farm services. So if you look at it, the farm services sounds good, right? And
exactly.
Yeah, to highlight this fact, I would like to add one imperative point here, that 86% of the farmers are small scale farmers.
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind before we understand the bill, And secondly, you have to understand we have to touch the base, why this bill is impacting in a detrimental way for everybody if they see it as a layperson, because the government's infrastructure or the existing model, acts as a spinal column, acts as a backbone for the farmers and the farm industry, from providing subsidies to incentives to providing, losses for remuneration or for harvest failures, for providing procurement houses, storing, then selling into minimum support, MSP, the minimum support price,
yes,
and the giving the warehouses, which is controlled by a government body, the APMCs, that is
right,
Agriculture Production Market Committee. So this is
right,
the basis of the government, the existing model, which has been set by the government from last, I think, 30, 40, more than 50 years, which is now being changed into private corporations, into private, large companies. So this
right,
is the basis of the government, which has already been there, which has been
right.
shifted in the bills. So this is, to understand this, this is the basis, that 86% of the farmers are the small scale farmers. Now, if you
Exactly.
bring them to the bill, the Empowerment and Protection Bill, like I said, the first clause, it
Right.
has a term called farm services. So it's a fancy word for contract farming.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Aha.
I would like to tell your viewers, please search about contract farming to review how, how it began and what are the emphasis of that farming. So, like I said, contractual farming is a contractual obligation between a buyer and a farmer's produce.
Right.
So, and if you look at it as a layperson's view, oh, it is going to be beneficial for the large scale farmers. If you have large farmers, you have a contract. But if you look at it with small scale farmers, firstly, they're tied up in a contractual obligation. They have to grow, they have to sow and harvest the same seed what is in the contract. And there is a big X factor, Manisha. If you look at the nature, the harvest is not always the same. It is,
Exactly.
yeah, it depends on climate, it depends on natural calamities, it depends on a particular soil that was sowed that particular region. So it depends on the nature, you know, um, in a massive way. So if we look at contract farming, there are many detrimental effects. For example, like I said, they have to grow a particular seed. There are land constraints, then there is marketing pressures, farmers' discontent, market fluctuations and vacillations, which the small scale farmers has to see. Now, I'm going to give you two extensive examples to understand this. And I think
Right.
your viewers will get a bird's eye view of why contract farming is detrimental for small scale farmers. There was a case in 2013, and everybody knows the company PepsiCo, they produced the Lays, and they sued for rupees 1 crore the Gujarat farmers. They were small scale farmers, so they sued them because they were growing the same seeds which were given to them through this contract farming. They were sowing these seeds and just, for their harvest. So they were sued for this clause under Article 64 and 65 of the PVT, which is Plant Varieties Act and Farmers Act.
Right.
But the court said under Article 34, Article 34, that the farmers are entitled and have the right to sow, harvest, and sell these particular seeds, only not brand them under the lays. So
Right.
now, can you understand the irreparable loss if the farmers, the small scale farmers under this contractual obligations, that they, small scale farmers which had up to 3 to 4 acres, not more than
Right.
that,
Right.
the irreparable loss with this contractual farming, the only fault was that they had this particular seed which they were already taking from the PepsiCo and sowing it in the soil. So this is one of the examples, So
Right.
to understand that if you have a contractual farming with a small scale farmer, the detrimental effect is way more,
Right.
Secondly, as you know, they are from the rural areas. So they have their, I mean, if as a layperson, if we read the contracts, there are conditions applied and certain glitches which you cannot understand, or even I cannot understand it as in being in a legal profession. So, but
Exactly.
for them, it is quite a big thing because the government provides them minimum support price, whereas the private corporations would not. And I do
Right.
not blame the private corporations because fidelity discounts, and profit gain is a big commercial principle. You know, being a lawyer in a corporate world, I understand the private companies are not wrong here. It is a
Mm-hmm.
contractual obligation with a small scale farmer which impedes the whole act. Second example, and a very extensive one, and I think not many people know it, this contract farming was initiated in Punjab in 2003 by the Punjab government, by Chief Minister Amrinder Singh. And he did that because his main objective was that the wheat and the paddy were the two main crops which were grown in Punjab at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to break that bedlock for the farmers so that they grow
Uh-huh.
barley, they grow rice, different millets which are exported, quinoa,
Mm-hmm.
and other things, to cultivate more crops in Punjab and to have
Right.
a more good infrastructure of the economy in the near future. And one more thing is that this was government controlled. There was a government body involved in this
Mm-hmm.
contract farming, but it was scrapped in 2012. It failed terribly because of various reasons. First, the government changed. There was no proper, like you say, the farming produce soil. There was no contract of right seed production. There was no contract for proper harvesting tools. So it failed miserably. So now
Right.
coming back to this law, the farmers fear if it was government controlled then, and a couple of, I just gave you an example of one case that Pepsi
Right.
wrote. There are multiple ones where the small scale farmers are tied up with the contractual farming, and this is the most controversial one. So now you understand the irreparable loss, the small scale farmers, and the 86% of them, so they're not getting procurement houses, they're not getting the MSPs, they're not getting the government regulated bodies where they can send this, harvest. And
Right.
the most, you can say, the biggest concern actually for them is, in case of, like I said, the X factor, natural calamities and their harvest failures, there will be no subsidies, there will be no
Right.
incentives, and no
Right.
remuneration.
Right.
So this is the
Yeah.
main thing. This is the most controversial one. Of course, there's a second one where it is about facilitation and processing, where the farmers are not, the biggest advantage being that the physical barriers of farmers, like I said, they have to sell it into mandis and APMC controlled mandis. So now there's no physical barrier. They
Right.
can go
I'm going
and
to
sell
ask
this.
you to tell us what a mandi is for those who don't know what a mandi is.
That is a good
Thank you.
question. A mandi is where the farmers take their harvest. It is stored. It is like a procurement warehouse where it is stored and then sold on for the market and consumers to get. So it is a government regulated process where they have minimum support price. For example, a farmer gets rice per kg at so and so price. So it is 1 to 3% of the commission which they take and then they sell it. It is not like if you get a private corporation instead, if it is a Reliance or SOCON, I don't want to name them. If they come into the picture, they take one, for example, wheat, they take it from the farmers and sell it for 2,000 rupees per kgs or 1,500 rupees per kgs in a private resource. So that is a mandi basically,
Right.
where you store, harvest, and sell. Yeah.
Right. And I think you've actually highlighted a very key point, which is that a lot of the agricultural sector in India are small scale farmers. It's the Indian model of agriculture is vastly different from the global agricultural scenario. So we're looking at small scale farmers that do need some protection in some way in terms of probably price control or subsidies. All
Yeah.
right. Why have negotiations not been successful so far?
They have been of around 12 meetings so far. And
Mm-hmm.
the negotiations have been primarily that the government is reiterating the laws. They're just telling the farmers, this is the law, we can change it a bit, we can hold it for a certain time, and then we can apply it again. But the farmers, it has been around 75 days now.
Mm-hmm.
So the farmers are saying if we had to, if the law is on hold, and I would like to specify here that the Supreme Court of India has held the law, the implementation, that is interim injunction of the law, for
Right.
at least now and for good 1.5 years. They said you can, we can hold the law and then the discussions can go on so that farmers can go home. But the government said, the major concern for the farmers is that they're reiterating the laws, and we don't want to reiterate the laws. We want to reappeal the laws. That is our
Mhm.
main concern, because we cannot come back again after 1.5 years and say that, we stand here and please control the laws, or they're having a detrimental effect. They have understood that if the basic infrastructure is changed into private corporations. And like I told you, the government applied it in Punjab in 2003, and it miserably failed. So their imperative concern is, if we cannot hold them now and then come back again. So that is why, if like I said, any negotiation would work if it is a collaborative approach. It
Mhm.
cannot work when both the parties stand on their objectives and say, no, we cannot move. So
Mhm.
certainly the farmers are being very strong. They are not being flexible at all. For the government to see, it is a glitch in a way, but
Yeah.
that's how it is going so far. Yeah.
All right. And we see the protests centered around the capital, New Delhi.
Mhm.
Is this predominantly a North Indian and a Central Indian farmers' protest, or is this actually nationwide?
Good point, Manisha. This is initially it started with Punjab.
Mm-hmm.
It had UP included. Then now the Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, then Rajasthan, and so forth and so on. But the Indian media's narrative has been that it is Punjab focused. So people, when they look at the social media, if you look at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, then you see the videos and you're like shocked. Okay, this is happening here, this is happening there. So it is the
Mm-hmm.
Indian narrative which is showing that it is Punjab based or Sikh based, but it is happening around major
Nationwide.
states of India and covering a lot of Indian farmers. Yeah.
Thank you. And there have been a lot of current changes in the events recently, in the last few weeks especially. And with that has come a little bit more international media focus. We have seen key celebrities talk about the protests. So that has brought a bit more global attention. We've seen tweets, we've seen an avalanche of social media as well take up this cause. How has that affected the protests in its totality?
Very good question, Manisha. If you see, this protest has been happening from last 75 days, right?
That's right.
And apparently, other than Indian media, no media got this. No international media pressure was there. No international tweets was there. So what initiated or invigorated this protest? It is the violation of fundamental rights. It is when the internet was cut. It is when warlike fortification happened, which reminded you of China, Pakistan borders. It was the cutting of toilets and water sanitaries there. Yes, electricity, that has also been cut. So it is amalgamation of all these things when the international pressure, international media got involved. It is the violation of human rights. It is not, they are not worried about the detrimental effect of the laws. It is for
Mhm.
the farmers, of course. But what is that which triggered international media to pitch in? It is the violation of human rights. If you
Right.
look at it, and to its own people, the barbarian barricading, the warlike fortification, like I said, it reminds you of borders in your own country, with your own people, with people of your ethnic mosaics, with people of your own religion, and own community. So it is
Mhm.
because of that Rihanna and other people like Greta, they tweeted that this is violation of human rights. And this was the fundamental reason why, I would like to add on, Manisha, here, the Rome rally we had.
Thank you. I was
Me
coming to
and
that. Thank you. Aha, yes.
uh,
Tell us. So
so
you recently went to Rome, Deepinder. You went there. Tell us why you went there.
Me and our organizers, they have a MAR movement, which
Hmm.
is a movement against atrocities and repression. So we
Right.
me, together with our organizers, I was the forerunner and the keynote speaker. So we went, and it was not a normal rally because we went in front of the Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN Rome,
Okay.
Italy. So
Okay.
it was primarily because we wanted to gain their attention,
Mm-hmm.
wanted them to intervene, and then we had petitions filed. We had about 30,000 people who signed this petition. Yes, all around Europe and all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then we submitted the petition. We had 7 resolutions, which we discussed with the UN bodies over a Zoom meeting.
Right.
And then we deposited that. And we had the memorandums, which we gave them at the United Nations organization, primarily and fundamentally for the farmers, right? And this was also because the Food and the Agriculture Organization is a key perspective, in this, because their pressure would have definitely come to UN. And then, like I don't know if you know or your viewers know, there was a big statement from United Nations organization a few days back that they are going to intervene and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
support in solidarity for the farmers, basically for the violation of human rights. So this
Right.
rally in totality helped us to, have their attention because we deposited, like I said, the memorandum, petitions, and resolutions. So their intervention is now of greater support. And this tweet is enough for everybody to know that there is international pressure from not only the celebrities, but also the United Nations itself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, Deepinder, before I say goodbye to you, I wanted to actually find out from you. There are a lot of parties at play over here, even within the farmers. There are a lot of groups that are within the protesters, rather united, but nonetheless, many, many groups and parties within them. So, what do you see as a way forward in terms of solutions and resolutions, and or in terms of finding common ground between the different parties at play?
Mhm. Manisha, like I mentioned earlier, there are more than 300,000 farmers converging at Indian borders, Delhi borders. And like I said, India retains its agrarian traditions massively. And 86% of the farmers and 60 to 70% of the population is in farming industry. So what happened now is that the farmers, especially Indian farmers, have lost trust in the government, in the retort and the responses of the government, and the way
Mhm.
this whole protest has been happening. So now there is trust deficit between the government and the farmers involved. And the negotiations, they didn't work. And predominantly the incidents which happened, in terms of the 75 days on ground. So it is the trust deficit between the parties which is missing now. The potential solution would be if the parties or, the Indian government would go there on ground, give them some, confidence and moral and support that we are there for you. This is what is happening. It is like if the person is communicating from far away, there is miscommunication. And the negotiations are, the Indian government has understood that there is no collaborative approach from the farmers. It is clearly one fundamental reason: they want the reappealing of the laws. And it is the government who's saying, we're going to delay the laws, we can add amendments, but they know that they're going to come back again with this privatization. Like I mentioned, the infrastructure, the existing model is going to be replaced with private corporations. So it is the trust deficit which is a major problem right now. I hope and I pray, and I also urge all the viewers and international people who are watching that please, spread awareness, donate Khalsa Aid, organizations like Khalsa Aid and other organizations who are helping on ground to provide, all the amenities and whatever help they could do. And also, I
Mhm.
would like to add that the Indian farmers, they're not only doing the protest there peacefully and quite peacefully actually, but also they're providing education there. They're providing, sanitary menstruation napkins and other things, and they're providing medical camps for
Wow.
people there. So it is in the plight of their agitation, they're providing so many things.
Mhm.
So it is not only a protest, but a peaceful one and a reasonable one. So it is the, like I said, trust deficit between the government and the people involved. I hope and I pray, that this agitation gets solved, and so the farmers can go home to their home, and it doesn't go into a violent or a religious or a political agenda, but on a peaceful note. Yeah.
Right. Deepinder, thank you very, very much. You've enlightened me a great amount through this episode. But more than that, you've just actually put a lot more clarity to the issue. So I gained a lot from you today, and I hope whoever gets to view this might get some clarity as I did. Deepinder, I'm wishing you all the very, very best, and may you go forward to bring a lot of light to this cause. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Manisha.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Manisha, for having me. I would like to sum up briefly by saying that there might be people who do not support the bill or passing of the bill, who do not think it is detrimental for the economy. I would like to urge them or encourage them to at least support against the violation of fundamental rights, against the violation of human rights. So please, by spreading the message, by signing the possible petitions, and by donating to certain organizations like Khalsa Aid and so forth, just supporting supporting against the violation of human rights. Thank you.